Doctor Who vs. Scratch Man, Part 8.
This is where you've always been heading, Time Lord, and you know it.
The demonic voice laughed.
To tell you the truth, I never knew where I was going. That's what's made it so fun,
the doctor replied. Suddenly, a ball of flame appeared just above the console. The doctor tried to run away, but the flames quickly shot a bolt right in front of him. The flaming sphere then started to form a humanoid shape with horns and cloven feet, before taking on an actual physical humanoid form. The creature had a furry, pale body, goat-like legs, and two very small horns on either side of its head. Its eyes were bright green, while its features were still long and sharp. Its teeth were small and jagged. Finally, its actual speaking voice was very different in its natural form. It was more high-pitched, yet somewhat softer sounding.
I wanted you to see me as I truly am, for I was once like you, Doctor. My name is Pan, and I am a member of the Elysius Federation.
The Elysius Federation?
The doctor said in disbelief.
They fell over 2,000 years before the time period those villagers came from. You've been suffering in that monster's prison all that time?
Elena came bursting through the door, carrying Yarox, who was still weak after his ordeal.
What's going on, Doctor?
Elena froze when she saw both Pan and the image on the scanner.
Don't worry, I'm not him. Though you'll meet Scratch Man soon enough. Or the devil, or whatever you primitives call him. I am Pan, a once noble intergalactic traveler like your friend the Doctor here.
Doctor, what is he talking about?
Elena asked.
He claims to be from the Elysius Federation. They were a collective of highly advanced beings who sought to elevate other races across the universe to their level. They visited Earth, I believe, many centuries ago. They helped lay the foundations for the ancient Greek society. Pan, from what I remember, was something of a renegade, who enjoyed being worshipped on whatever world he came to as a god, without doing much to help the natives.
Those stories were exaggerated,
Pan fired back.
Still,
Pan continued,
it is true to some extent that I was a bit of a vagabond in my younger days. But then, aren't we all? Remember, I've peeked into both of your memories, Doctor. Elena.
They both looked away, a little bit embarrassed, hoping Pan wouldn't reveal more.
In my later years, I truly tried to make amends for my selfish behavior, and that's what got me trapped in here. My people, when we stayed on Earth, detected that certain human minds were being drained by a mysterious force. We had always suspected there was something wrong with this planet, as had the Osirans before us. But after centuries, we traced the dimensional rip. Several of us traveled to Scratchman's realm to try and save the human souls. But we ended up as the servants of Scratchman instead. We were far from the only aliens ever to visit this planet to try and stop Scratchman. Thousands of advanced life forms have detected his presence and the rip to his dimension. In fact, the Earth has a reputation in certain corners of the galaxy for being the home of Scratchman. The Earthlings are pitied more than any other races across the galaxy as a result. Poor primitives have no idea that the hardships for life are nothing compared to what awaits so many of them in the beyond. Many alien species have visited the Earth to try and sever Scratchman's connection to it. Some have tried to harness the power from his realm for their own purposes. All now either serve him or lie at the bottom of that molten lake, screaming forever. Many have entered humanity's mythology, of course. The Dark Knight? He was once a noble alien warrior who came to Earth to stop the ultimate evil. Scratchman not only killed him, but made him a kind of messenger who takes people to hell from the Earth before their deaths. Charon, once a brave daredevil fighter pilot in the Hisrika League, now the humble ferryman of the dead.
Pan needed to stop for a minute. It seemed that for all his bluster, deep down there was perhaps still a trace of the good man he once was, or had tried to be, trapped under the monster he had become.
This is what awaits you, Time Lord. I just hope that when he makes you his new servant, he finally releases me.
Pan said before vanishing into a puff of black smoke. The two TARDIS doors soon opened, and despite his best efforts, the Doctor wasn't able to close them. All of the TARDIS's systems appeared to be dead, or at least locked.
Well, I guess we'll have to play Scratchman or Pan's sick game for now,
the Doctor said to his two companions as he headed out onto the red, barren landscape. Though the Doctor was terrified, he really didn't need any persuasion to explore the landscape before him. No matter what the circumstances, the Doctor's hunger for discovery knew no bounds. Elena, meanwhile, was more reluctant. She wasn't eager to see what other fears or horrors Pan or any of Scratchman's minions would cull from her mind, but she knew she couldn't let the Doctor just walk off on his own.
If only he'd just think once before he goes off,
Elena moaned to Yerox, who was still weak and needed Elena just to walk. Scratchman wanted the Doctor and the TARDIS brought to him separately. That way, if the Doctor escaped from Scratchman's minions, then he would still be stuck there. It was always better to separate your enemy from his or her weapon, the demon thought to itself. Outside, the air of the planet was intensely hot. Elena and Yerox almost collapsed at first, while even the Doctor had taken rest on a nearby rock, though he quickly jumped up as it was scorching. As the three time travelers got close to the molten lake, they could hear the moans and the screams of those trapped within getting louder and louder, while the flames in the sky above seemed to get darker and more unstable, almost as if they were excited.
I can see why Scratchman wants to leave this place. Only problem is, he seems to have a bad habit of making everywhere he moves the same,
the Doctor said as he stared at something in the distance. It was hard to clearly make out in the scorching heat, but the Doctor could see something begin to move from behind one of the rocks. It looked like a long, clawed arm. Suddenly, hundreds more creatures began to crawl out from behind the rocks, under the sand, and some even emerged from the burning sky in front of the Doctor, Yerox, and Elena. There were hundreds of different types of beasts. Some resembled rotting corpses, others giant horned demons, some were flaming figures just like Pan had been on Earth. The army of monsters pushed the Doctor, Yerox, and Elena back to the very edge of the molten lake. With nothing to lose, the Doctor and Elena tried to fight the monsters, but they were hopelessly overpowered. Yerox, despite still being somewhat weak from the torture, also did his best to help his friends. The three time travelers were pushed towards the very edge of the cliff over the molten lake.
Stop. The Master wants to speak with the Time Lord personally,
a voice said. The Doctor looked up to see a small, cloaked figure emerging from the crowd of abominations. Its face was green and rotting, while its teeth were small and very sharp.
My dear Doctor, I hope you haven't been made too uncomfortable,
the figure said in a seemingly sincere and polite tone.
I am Charon, the ferryman of the dead. I will take you across the lake in my boat.
Boat? I thought it was a raft, the Doctor said.
It used to be, but hardly anyone would ever make it across. The souls would pull them in. Even with the boat, so few people make it across. I keep telling Scratchman to upgrade, but to be honest, I think that's the point. Don't worry, though. He really wants to speak with you, so you should be safe.
Safe? I'd rather take my chances in the lake, the Doctor said.
Well, to be honest, so would I. But you can't fight the Master. You can't fight him anywhere, but certainly not in his domain.
With no other choice, the three time travelers headed across the burning sands to a dock where there was a single vehicle parked. What looked like a large, strange purple boat, shaped like a cone with a hatch opening up at the front.
It's from my home planet. Or rather, it's meant to look like it,
Charon said.
Nothing like a little piece of home, eh?
Yerox replied somewhat nervously.
Not at all. This is the boat I died in while helping Hades. It was ripped apart by one of Scratchman's monsters, the Kraken, that he sent to terrorize the Earth.
Oh God, I saw that creature. I had a brief encounter with it back in the village. That was enough, Elena mentioned.
It continued to kill me many times since. The Kraken actually lives in the lake. Often it will tear this ship apart and throw the souls into the lake before devouring me. I always reappear back in the harbor, however, waiting for the next group of souls in my next death.
I'm sorry, Elena said.
It's okay. I no longer fear death. How could I when I've died hundreds of times already? It's the waking up bit after that's the worst. I just hope one of these days he lets me rest.
The inside of the ship was dark, dank, and filled with rotting corpses.
Your latest passengers, I take it?
The doctor asked.
No, my first. They were the other members of my team when we first came to Earth. We all had such high hopes that we would be the ones to take down Scratchman. Their bodies are to serve as a reminder of my failure. But I stopped caring a long time ago.
The boat sped through the lake.
It won't take long. The Master's castle is on the edge of the lake. He likes to watch the souls suffer in the morning,
Charon said.
I just can't wait to meet him,
the doctor replied. Yerox sat at the edge of the room, away from the bodies. Once again, Elena was the only one to notice his discomfort and tried to console him, while the doctor kept bugging Charon with questions.
I'm sorry, Yerox. I know what you saw. I saw it too. This is the price of the life we live. The freedom from everything, responsibility, time itself,
Elena said.
It's not that,
Yerox said with regret.
I wasn't strong. When those Daleks or whatever they were, the hallucinations were torturing me, I gave in, Elena. I betrayed you and the doctor. We know. We saw it,
she explained.
I understand if you want to throw me off the TARDIS,
he replied.
I'm afraid it's not up to me. I don't blame you, though.
Scratchman, or whatever that creature was, conjured up your darkest fears.
But what if those Daleks had been real? I would have told them everything. I would have happily taken them to the TARDIS just to be free from that pain. I don't think I can cope,
Yerox insisted.
Where will you go? You can't go back home. Suppose we just dump you somewhere, and then you find you can't cope there, but you have no one to help you. I admit, there's still a lot about the doctor that I don't understand. But I know he'd never just leave you somewhere or give up on a friend. Also, if he did, I'd go with you,
Elena assured. Yerox was greatly moved by Elena's words, but he still couldn't help but feel he didn't deserve her loyalty.
Fascinating,
the doctor said loudly. He didn't really think that, but he was trying to annoy Charon by distracting him with pointless questions about the ship. But the ferryman of the dead was not taking the doctor's bait. Charon didn't seem malicious like Pan. He seemed quite laid back and even charming in some ways, but really he was more just detached from everything around him. The doctor felt he could strike him physically, and Charon still wouldn't react. Just then, the ship suddenly stopped.
It's the souls from the lake. Misery loves company and all that. Don't worry, they are easy to deal with,
Charon said as he reached for a weapon under the counter. The damned souls started to rip the hatch open. Elena and Yerox stood beside the doctor, though he was just as defenseless as they were. Elena made sure to try and push Yerox behind her, though he tried to push her behind him. He was determined to make up for his earlier cowardice. The creatures' bodies were burned almost beyond recognition. The skin of each of the monsters was black and decaying. Their eyes were burned out of their sockets, and their green broken teeth were exposed. Despite this, however, they could somehow see very clearly and shuffled towards the doctor and Charon.
This weapon will take them down. It destroys their souls completely. I don't think they want to harm us. They just want it all to be over. I'm more than happy to oblige,
Charon said as he fired at the souls, burning all of them into nothing. As soon as Charon tried to start the ship again, however, the doctor seized his chance and tried to tackle the ferryman of the dead. Charon, however, just simply hurled the doctor across the room. Next, Elena tried to use her Arcturian kung fu on the ferryman, but she was overpowered just as easily. Yerox was the next to prepare to strike, but Charon simply laughed at him. It was the only emotion the ferryman of the dead had shown so far.
I have to take people across a burning lake to hell. You really think I can't defend myself?
The ferryman asked, only for Yerox to wisely back down. Suddenly, however, Yerox and Charon were both distracted by a hideous shrieking sound.
No, it can't be. The souls. It was a trap,
Charon said as he tried to start the ship. But before he could, 3 hideous, blue-winged monsters descended on the hatch.
Harpies!
Charon screamed. The boat wasn't moving, however, because several more souls in the lake were holding it in place.
Incredible,
Charon thought to himself. He had never seen so many souls be able to hold off the agony from being in the lake for this long. One of the harpies instantly ensnared Elena in its talons, while the other tried to grab the doctor, but Charon brought it down with one shot of his gun. Unfortunately, the harpy with Elena quickly ascended to the skies above the lake. Charon couldn't fire at it now without sending Elena into the lake of fire. She was in those monsters' custody. The harpy's talons tightened around Elena's shoulders enough to draw blood as the Cyclops struggled to break free. Elena's constant fighting very nearly caused the harpy to lose her balance and go tumbling into the lake with the time traveler in tow.
I'm here to help. Keep on with this and we'll both end up in the lake,
the harpy shrieked. Elena didn't trust the demon, but she realized it was pointless to keep fighting the beast. Wherever the harpy was planning to take her, it couldn't be worse than the pit, she hoped.
We have to find her,
the doctor pleaded with Charon.
Trust me, she's better off with those harpies than you both are. Either these souls will tip the boat, or worse, you'll end up where I'm supposed to take you,
Charon said. More and more of the souls kept climbing overboard, while hundreds of the ghosts gathered around the bottom of the vehicle to hold it in place.
We're sinking. Quick, shut the hatch,
Charon shouted as he tried to operate the controls. The doctor was able to seal the lock with his sonic screwdriver before dozens of the damned souls could enter, though unfortunately, 3 of the ghosts had managed to crawl into the ship itself during the commotion. One of the ghosts literally phased through Charon from behind and then wrestled his gun free before throwing it to the floor. When the doctor tried to reach it, one of the creatures floated in front of the weapon at a tremendous speed. At the back of the room, the doctor could see the ghost that had attacked Charon toss his body to the ground. He wasn't sure if the legendary ferryman of the dead was alive or not, and he didn't particularly care. Yerox, meanwhile, again in a sign of bluster to make up for his earlier showing, tried to attack one of the ghosts, but the doctor held him back.
They've been burning in a lake of fire for thousands of years. I don't think we'll be able to hurt them with our fists,
the doctor said.
Well, what are we going to do?
Yerox asked.
Try and reason with them. What? You heard me.
The doctor stood seemingly unafraid of the 3 ghosts who shuffled around him. In reality, he was absolutely terrified, but the Time Lord hoped he could gain the damned soul's trust more if he came from a position of understanding rather than necessity.
I am the doctor. As hard as this may be to believe, I am not your enemy. The creature who imprisoned you in this lake, he wants my vessel to escape this realm. If you kill me now, he'll still have my vessel, and he'll eventually find a way to use it to escape. If you help me, well, maybe I can escape and make him pay for what he has done to you.
We know,
one of the corpses said in a feminine voice. It had obviously been a woman in life, but the body was little more than a skeleton.
That's why we were trying to help you,
it continued.
What?
The doctor replied.
We are part of the last resistance of this universe against the terror that threatens yours. You don't think we'd be on the side of the monster that dropped us in the lake of fire, do you?
The ghost explained.
Well, no, I suppose not. But when you're burning in a lake of fire, you might not always be able to think straight,
the doctor replied.
Charon said that the lake turns you into monsters. Granted, he's not the most trustworthy source, but
the doctor said, only for the ghost to interrupt him.
He's right. The fire burns most people's identity away until they're nothing but animals. Some of us, however, endure through the fire for whatever reason. Love, hope, or a desire for vengeance against Scratchman. 1 in every million souls condemned to that lake still remembers who it is, though only 1 in every million of the souls who remember is not driven completely insane like those scarecrows that attacked your dimension. Eventually, those of us who kept our identities decided to get together to protect ourselves. That's when the Harpies contacted us.
They didn't seem too friendly,
Yerox said.
Trust me, they are the good guys. They are the last of what was once a mighty race in this universe. One every bit as advanced as yours, Time Lord.
Ah, so you know about me then,
the doctor said, trying not to look too prideful.
The Harpies do. They've been fighting Scratchman for millennia. They wanted to help you escape, It was our job to keep the ferryman of the dead occupied long enough for the Harpies to get you to their command. Trust me, given the dangers that exist in this lake, even that was a tremendous task. Sadly, we failed. If the Harpies were to return now, they'd be swamped by the other souls in the lake. They'd never get you to safety in time.
Well, if you would have just explained that, I would have been happy to go with you. Still, we're not entirely blameless. I should have learned by now that after 10 lifetimes, not to judge people by their appearances. Is there any way we can contact the Harpies? The doctor said.
No, I'm afraid not. It won't be long before Scratchman's most heinous minions will be here. We have to escape to Amit's cave,
The leader of the ghosts said.
Amit, are you insane?
Another one of the ghosts replied.
Not even Scratchman's most dangerous demons will dare follow us in there. Only Scratchman himself would, but he's too lazy to attack right away. Amit's cave might just give us the time to formulate a plan,
The female ghost explained.
assuming Amit doesn't eat us all right away.
The other ghost replied.
That's a chance we will have to take. We cannot allow Scratchman to get a hold of the Time Lord. You heard what the Harpy said he will do to the other universe, or rather, to my universe. I come from the planet Earth too, Time Lord. Even I struggle to remember who I was at times, but I do know that the person I was in life did not deserve this.
The female ghost continued.
No one deserves this.
The doctor said with regret.
Still, if this cave is the only way forward, then we need to get there at once.
The doctor continued as he started to examine the controls.
I'm sorry, this machine is unlike anything I've ever seen. Charon is the only one who can help us. I do hope you haven't killed him,
The doctor said.
Not at all. He's a victim just like us. Besides, if we did, he'd just come back again.
The female ghost said.
Ah, of course. I can't throw stones, though. I've come back 9 times already.
The doctor joked. As soon as he awoke, Charon tried to overpower the 3 ghosts who managed to restrain him.
We need your help, Charon.
The female ghost said.
Why on earth do you think I'd help you? Don't get me wrong, I feel bad for you. The little feeling I have left. But you know as well as I do, it's a good idea not to cross Scratchman.
The ferryman replied.
I also know that you hate your existence. You might try to act as though you don't care, but deep down, every second you wish it would just end. You were once a hero, and now you're a lapdog for an evil greater than you could have ever imagined. Worse, you bring people to him every day. If you help him now, he'll keep you alive in this state forever. What if I were to tell you that I could end it?
The leader of the ghosts asked.
I'd say you were a liar. A desperate liar who still doesn't realize that you can't fight him.
Charon replied.
We want to make our way into the Destroyer's cave,
She explained. After a few seconds of silence from Charon, he replied.
Then I'd say you were insane. It's the best place for us to hide. Amit, though dangerous, is just an animal. None of Scratchman's demons will follow us in there. It will give us time to contact the Harpies and eternal rest for you. You know that when Amit devours a person's soul, they die for good. Even Scratchman can't bring them back,
She said.
I'm surprised he would even have something like that. Is Amit not too merciful of a creature for old Harry Scratch?
The doctor inquired. The ghost explained.
He uses it to keep the demons who are loyal to him in check. It's the only Osiren that died on Earth that he was able to snatch because it was a simple beast. Also, it's been quite an effective method of torture for us too. Every second in that lake is agony, and just up ahead is a creature we know will end our pain. All of us had tried to swim towards it, but we are pulled back, either by the current or
Or what?
The doctor asked.
the Kraken. You don't have to tell me about the Kraken. I've tried to get into Amit's cave 1 billion times, only for that tentacled monster to eat me every time. There's no way we can get past it,
Charon said with regret.
Yes, there is. The Harpies have prepared a ritual that will weaken the beast. They have been working on it for centuries. We just have to chant it when it emerges,
The female ghost protested.
What if it doesn't work? What if Scratchman...
Charon said before the doctor interrupted.
If you will allow me to interrupt, from what I gather, before this horrible mess, you were once a good man. The fact that you want to be free of the life you are living now shows that some trace of him still exists. Tell me, would the person you were before not take any chance he could, no matter how remote, to stop a monster like Scratchman?
Charon was silent for a few minutes before he started to work the controls.
I suppose it can't get any worse for me,
The ferryman of the dead said.
You need to tell your friends out there to let us go,
Charon said to the female ghost. The Harpy had arrived at its destination, an immense purple mountain that looked as though it was phasing in and out. The mountain had the ability to change its location, which is how it had eluded Scratchman for such a long while. Gathered at the foot of the mountain, meanwhile, were hordes of hideous creatures, clearly the servants of Scratchman. It couldn't remain here much longer. There was no entrance, and the Harpy simply flew into the mountain. Elena screamed at it to stop, but before she knew it, she was inside a gigantic, dark cavern. Below, she could see hundreds of strange creatures, centaurs, harpies, satyrs, cyclops, as well as what looked like living skeletons, all gathered together in front of a colossal golden altar where a larger, blue harpy sat. Elena's harpy flew her towards the larger harpy, who was clearly in charge. In fact, she was their queen.
I am sorry we were unable to get a hold of the Time Lord,
The harpy said as she lowered Elena down in front of its master.
What about the TARDIS?
The blue harpy asked of its other subordinate.
I'm afraid the platoon was ambushed by demons and we failed. It is in Scratchman's care now,
A centaur standing by the throne said.
I have one of his companions. We might be able to use her,
The harpy that had captured Elena said.
She's worthless,
The queen harpy replied, much to Elena's annoyance. Not that it cared.
The Time Lord is the only one that matters. Only he can pilot his ship to escape from this reality. Scratchman will find him and force the Doctor to create a rip to their universe. The Doctor would never give in to that monster,
Elena protested.
Trust me, no one can withstand Scratchman. The Time Lord will eventually break. All is lost,
The queen replied. The crowd started to go insane. Their leader didn't even attempt to calm them down. What could she even say?
There must be something we could do,
Elena's captor begged.
What do you propose? Launch a full attack on Scratchman's castle?
The leader replied.
Why not?
Elena asked.
Don't be fooled by our army, alien,
The queen snapped back.
It's tiny compared to Scratchman's forces. We'd be lucky to last a few hours, and we still don't have anything we can harm that abomination with.
Well, maybe a few hours is all we need,
The lesser harpy said.
Like you said, the most important thing is to make sure that Scratchman doesn't get his grubby mitts on the TARDIS. Our universe is done,
She continued.
Don't say that!
One of the Cyclopses screamed. He was followed by cheers from hundreds of his comrades.
One day we will be free of Scratchman. One day our descendants will celebrate overcoming that demon,
He continued. The Harpy Queen didn't even bother to reply at first before finally admitting the truth to herself.
If we can get the TARDIS back to the Doctor, it might be a worthy cause. Tell me what happened to the Doctor when you last saw him,
The Harpy Queen asked its subordinates.
Several of the damned souls we were in contact with had stopped Charon's boat. But they won't last long before either Scratchman's souls or demons arrive,
The Harpy who had rescued Elena explained.
Still, there is a chance they haven't got to him yet. We need to send more Harpies to try and find him, while the rest of us take the front and try to rescue the TARDIS,
The Harpy Queen ordered.
What about the Black Knight?
A centaur asked.
We can't afford to risk him being exposed now. If this battle doesn't work, he will be our final option, but we need to get the TARDIS. The Doctor's companion is right. If we can do anything to stop that devil from doing this to another reality, won't that be worth it?
We need to take the war to Scratchman himself, the Queen said. Not all of the crowd was convinced, but enough of them were that it might make a difference, Elena thought, though the Doctor, Yerox, and her universe's chances were still looking very slim. Meanwhile, back in the lake.
There it is. The cave of the destroyer,
Charon said.
Well, we can't just wait for the Kraken to turn up. Come on, enough dilly-dallying,
the Doctor interrupted somewhat nervously. As the ship moved closer to the cave, however, suddenly it was rocked by something so hard it caused the Doctor, Yerox, and all of the damned souls to fall off of their feet. Charon scrambled up and opened the hatch. Above, he saw a sight that terrified even him, the man who had been killed an immeasurable number of times already. It was the sight of literally hundreds of demons descending from the fiery skies. These weren't just any old demons, however. They were Scratchman's personal elite. It hadn't taken Scratchman long to realize that something was wrong. It was his domain, after all.
There's no chance we can fight those monsters off,
Charon said.
We can't just give up,
the Doctor responded, only to see that all of those around, save for Yerox, who didn't really know the gravity of the situation, had done just that.
Trust me, there's no point.
Those demons are the strongest force Scratchman has,
the female ghost said.
It would take...
Before she could finish, she and the others were quickly alarmed and delighted by the sight of hundreds of harpies, flying towards the demons. Within a matter of seconds, the demons and the harpies became caught in a truly vicious battle with one another.
It can't be. The harpies are launching a full-scale war,
the female ghost said.
They won't stand a chance,
Charon replied. Sure enough, the demons were easily dominating the harpies in the fight. Just one of Scratchman's hideous minions was able to tear apart 3 of the harpies at once. The harpies at least vastly outnumbered this small army of demons, though even then, they were only able to inflict a few small casualties on the demons. Still, at least the winged creatures' sacrifices were keeping the demons away from the Doctor and the others. The largest of the demons kept tearing its way through the harpies to try and get at Charon's vehicle, but every time it did, more harpies would surround it. Some of the damned souls from the lake also tried to join in the battle as some of the demons and the harpies flew closer to the lake. The very few who came in on the harpies' side were dispatched easily, however. The way Charon's ship had come had been completely cut off by the hordes of demons and harpies fighting, meaning their only way was forward now.
We have to move now,
the female ghost said.
We have to get you and your craft out of this reality, Time Lord. You must promise us that when you get back to your reality, you will let the great powers of your universe know about what is happening here. Quarantine the Earth if need be, to stop Scratchman from using any other unwitting alien like yourselves' technology from being used by this demon.
I promise,
the Doctor said, though he didn't really mean it. The Doctor wasn't sure about letting other life forms, including even his own people, know about the Earth. For all he knew, it could make the planet more of a target. Other life forms could want to destroy the Earth to prevent any chance of Scratchman from clawing his way into our universe. Other aliens, meanwhile, might stupidly come to the Earth for the challenge and glory of being the one to defeat Scratchman like before. At the same time, however, the ghost was right. Unless the portal to Scratchman's realm was closed, the monster could always use any other stray alien's technology for his own ends, or even humanity itself once it reached a certain stage of development. Still, he couldn't worry about that now. All that mattered was getting the TARDIS.
We still need to get to Emmett's cave,
the female ghost said.
Why?
Yerox asked.
Would you rather go through the war up ahead?
I'm just glad that once we get there, it will all be over for me,
Charon said as he headed towards the cave. Just as Charon moved the ship forward, however, the Kraken's tentacles started to emerge from the water. Charon froze for a few seconds before driving his ship furiously into the monster's arms. He didn't even push the demonic octopoid back an inch. It simply enveloped the ship.
Akasio, Leranak, Hesial,
the female ghost chanted, which caused the Kraken to drop the vessel and become docile. Charon for the first time drove the ship past the Kraken, but just before he reached the cave, he stopped.
What are you doing? We don't have much time,
the ghost said frantically.
Just one thing,
Charon said as he opened the hatch. Outside, while the harpies and demons were fighting, or rather the harpies were being slaughtered, Charon spat on the docile Kraken.
I couldn't have died for good without doing that, he said.
On the other side of the valley, meanwhile, the rest of the rebellion were preparing to launch their attack on Scratchman's castle. The castle was made entirely from the bones of various creatures. Literally entire species worth of life forms had been sacrificed just for the devil's fancy palace. Elena had joined the army advancing to the front. The Harpies didn't know or even trust her, but they needed all of the forces they could get. This was where the bulk of the army was. Hundreds of Harpies in the sky, as well as 2 gigantic dragons, centaurs, cyclops, and living skeletons marching on the ground. Sadly, however, even after all this time, the creatures underestimated Scratchman. "There is a future for us, you know," Elena said to one of the cyclops just before the battle, who she naturally felt a certain kinship with. "I'm from it. I know that Scratchman doesn't win. Well, I know it's possible that he doesn't win, at least. The doctor tells me that we can make our own past when we time travel. It's always the present for us, if that makes sense, but..."
Please, I don't need extra encouragement. I'd gladly die 1,000 times if it meant trapping that monster in here. This entire world is crumbling. Why do you think he sent his minions to bring you and the doctor here? He is at his strongest in his castle, but even then his power decreases every day. Oh, Scratchman denies it. Even some of our generals deny it, and hold on to false hope that one day he can be overcome. The sad truth is, this entire reality has been bent and broken so much that even Scratchman can't sustain it for long. When it vanishes, he'll be trapped in the eternal nothingness that this universe will become, unable to draw energy from any other reality, any life form. We'll all die instantly, but we'll be free. A being of his power will linger on and possibly be condemned to an eternity of torment in that nothing, if we can just hold him. I'd say that's worth any sacrifice, the Cyclops interrupted.
"Don't you want to save your world? You're happy to see your history, your culture just vanish in the blink of an eye?" Elena asked.
It vanished a long time ago, and it wasn't in the blink of an eye. Now the creature responsible will pay.
As they advanced on the castle, hordes of monsters began to emerge from all around and from every window. Some of the bones that made it up even began to come to life and form into Frankenstein's monsters made up of the bones of numerous different creatures. Under the bones were flames, showing that actually the skeletons didn't even support the castle. They were simply decorations. Giant horned demons of various kinds, creatures made of fire, rotting corpses, they all made up the bulk of Scratchman's army. One of the 2 dragons on the Harpy Queen's side flew down towards the horde and breathed fire on all of Scratchman's forces, turning the demons into ash, while the creatures made of flames dissipated. However, just as it looked as though the tide could be turned in the rebels' favor, 5 more dragons from Scratchman's castle emerged from the top of the highest tower. None of Scratchman's dragons were as powerful as the 2 the army had managed to capture, however. That had been their greatest victory against Scratchman in all the millennia they had been fighting the monster. However, while Scratchman's dragons were not as powerful, they were still strong enough to divert the dragon's attention away from the forces below, causing the rebels to lose their advantage. Alone and on the ground, the rebels again were no match for Scratchman's forces. During the fight, Elena, much to her shame, kept to the side and tried to avoid fighting any of the monsters. It didn't take her long to realize that fighting these beasts wasn't a smart option. The Cyclops she had spoken to was killed in a matter of seconds by a large flaming demon, having barely been able to even lift his sword. She hoped that perhaps she could sneak her way into the castle, which is where the TARDIS most likely would be. She had no idea what she was going to do when she got there, but it was better than just getting pointlessly killed on the battlefield. The Doctor, Charon, Yerox, and the ghosts, meanwhile, had successfully made their way deep into Amit's cave before the Kraken recovered. The inside appeared to be a temple of some kind, with a completely alien design. The ruins of whatever civilization had once thrived on the planet Scratchman had decided to make his base of operations. On the walls were paintings of incredible creatures, either the rulers of this once proud world, or perhaps the gods they had once worshipped. It seemed likely that Scratchman would choose a holy building as the place to keep his most vile and feared pet.
I don't like this. The destroyer should be here. It's toying with us,
the female ghost said.
I hope Scratchman hasn't killed her just to spite us,
Charon replied. As they reached the end of the cave, they saw a wall of fire over 30 feet tall.
I don't think the sonic screwdriver will get through that,
the doctor joked to try and lighten the mood.
It's okay. We have enchantments that can break Scratchman's wall of fire. We'll have to move quickly,
the female ghost said. As soon as she started the ritual, however, the ground below her started to shake, and in a matter of minutes, a crocodile's head as big as an elephant came bursting through the ground and devoured the ghost lady in a single bite.
Amit,
Charon said excitedly.
Peace at last.
Amit soon burst out of the ground completely. Its body was over 50 feet long. Just as described in the myths, its head was a crocodile, while its body was that of a lion, and its legs were that of a hippo. Everyone ran from the beast except for Charon, who ran towards it. Yerox and the doctor only noticed at the last minute, but could do nothing to help him. In one bite, Amit swallowed the ferryman of the dead. The monster lumbered after the doctor, Yerox, and the remaining souls, all of whom it picked off one by one, until only the doctor and Yerox were left. The doctor felt that perhaps the souls, much like Charon, were desperate to be free of their burden too. Had he and Yerox perhaps been misled by those ghosts into going on this suicide mission? Amit smashed all of the pillars and ruins as he furiously chased after the Time Lord and Yerox. Both stuck together in the confusion, though at one point they did become separated by a falling pillar. There was nowhere for them to run. Each time the doctor and Yerox made it back the way they had came from the lake, the Kraken's tentacles would rise from the depths. While at the other end, the flaming wall kept them out. They simply ran around in circles while the doctor searched for a tiny hole and opening. But he found nothing, not even somewhere to hide. By the 6th time they had run around, the doctor was so exhausted that he had almost collapsed.
This isn't the most athletic body I've ever had, Yerox, I'm afraid. I've maybe not looked after it as much as I should. Too much Venetian cuisine, the doctor said through gasps of air. We can't give up now, Doctor. Believe me, my boy, I don't want to. But I think I'm going to pass out.
As Amit advanced on them again, the fire door suddenly vanished and a tall, middle-aged man with graying dark hair, a handsome face, and a bright orange suit emerged. Amit instantly bowed in reverence to him.
Watching you run away from the monsters stopped being amusing after the 3rd time. But I could never go easy on you, the man said.
Allow me to introduce myself, Time Lord. I am Harry Scratch. To be continued.